rig, man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see what I see. Standing on the front lines, fighting for the truth. Lift the veil of lies, it's time to be the proof. Take a stand, don't you back down. Raise your voice, let's shake the town. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. United and free. Marching with a purpose, we're taking it higher. Fighting through the struggle, igniting the fire. No more silence, we'll make the noise loud. Together in this battle, standing strong and proud. Injustice fades when courage aligns. Rise up together, break the confines. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. United and free. So rise up now, it's our time to shine. Together we'll write a new paradigm. You paradigm, you paradigm. Whoa, whoa. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. Rise up now, it's our time to shine. United and free. Together we'll write a new paradigm. United and free. United and free. United and free.
Okay. Just having some IT issues. We'll set those up. Yeah. Okay, thank you. What's that? Yes, sir. You three want to have a seat in the front there, please. Good afternoon. Please be seated. As the three of you are aware, we do have a verdict. So at this time, I'm going to discharge the three of you. I'm going to read you a final discharge instruction. After that, you're free to leave if you'd like, or if you'd like to stay, you're invited to stay right where you are with the rest of the jurors, and we can debrief in the back afterward. So it's really up to you. You now have completed your duties as alternate jurors in this case, and you are discharged with the thanks of everybody, including your community. Thank you so much. The question may arise whether you may now discuss this case with the lawyers or other persons. For your guidance, the court instructs you that whether you talk to anyone is entirely your decision. It is proper for others to discuss the case with you, and you may talk with them, but you need not. If you speak with them, you may tell them as much or as little about your role in this case and anything about the case in terms of your decision, if you have one. If any person persists in the discussion of the case over your objection or becomes critical of your service, either before or after any discussion has begun, please report it to me, see what I can do, okay? With that, would you like to stay? Okay, and for the record, we have 3744 and 4137, thank you, and 3058. Our fourth alternate was sick today, and I approved him not appearing. That's 2970. Also appreciate his time and attention. With that, then, we'll bring in the jury, please. All right, please be seated. And good afternoon, everyone. I believe you're 3929, is that correct? So you're the foreperson. And it's our understanding that the jury has reached a unanimous verdict, is that correct? On all counts? All right. If you could tender that to Mr. Collins, please. Put this in front of the documents. Thank you. I'm going to remind everyone of the decorum order. If you need to leave the room, you're welcome to, but please no audible outbursts. All right, jury verdict, count number 1, as to Nevin Stanisic. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 1, murder in the first degree. Jury verdict, count number 2, as to Kevin Mahoney. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 2, murder in the first degree, indicating on all of these that there is a signature by the foreperson. Jury verdict, count number 3, Trulana Bartkowiak. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 3, first-degree murder. Jury verdict, count number 4, Ricky Olds, murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 4, murder in the first degree. Jury verdict, count number 5, Denny Stong, murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 5, murder in the first degree. Jury verdict, count number 6, Lynn Murray, murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 6, murder in the first degree. Jury verdict, count number 7, Terry Liker, murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 7, murder in the first degree. Jury verdict, count number 8, Jody Waters, murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 8, murder in the first degree. Jury verdict, count number 9, Suzanne Fountain, murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 9, murder in the first degree. Jury verdict, count number 10, Eric Talley, murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 10, murder in the first degree. Jury verdict, count number 11, Angela Peacock, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 11, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And yes, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 12, Casey Taylor, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 12, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, yes, the prosecution has proven that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 13, Hayden Steele, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 13, attempt to commit murder in the first degree, and further find that the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 14, Kajendra Malla, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 14, attempt to commit murder in the first degree, and further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 15, Jacqueline Keaton, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 15, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 16, Paul Johnson, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 16, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 17, Kimberly Breckus, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Alissa guilty of count number 17, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 18, Michael Hong, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 18, attempt to commit murder in the first degree, and further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 19, Tasia Barra Ford, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 19, attempt to commit murder in the first degree, and further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 20, Patrick Cruz, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 20, attempt to commit murder in the first degree, and further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 21, James Graham, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 21, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 22, Kelly Ray Dorr, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 22, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 23, Sarah Moonshadow, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 23, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 24, Sarah Moonshadow, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 24, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 25, Nick Edwards, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 25, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 26, Nick Edwards, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 26, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 27, Christopher Tatum, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 27, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. Further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 28, Christopher Tatum, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 28, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. Further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 29, Brian Capobianco, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 29, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 30, Pam Jimyak, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 30, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 31, Richard Stidel, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 31, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 32, Richard Stidel, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Al Aliwi, guilty of count number 32, attempt to commit murder in the first degree, and further that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict, count number 33, Brian Pleiter, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 33, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 34, Brian Pleader, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 34, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. Further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 35, Alexander Casera, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 35, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 36, Alexander Casera, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 36, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 37, Jenny Schmeitz, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 37, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 38, Jenny Schmitz, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 38, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 39, DJ Richard Smith, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 39, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 40, DJ Richard Smith, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 40, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 41, Brian Capobianco, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 41, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 42, Brian Capobianco, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 42, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 43, Brandon Braun, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 43, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 44, Brandon Braun, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 44, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 45, Michael West, after deliberation, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 45, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 46, Michael West, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 46, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 47, Jeffrey Brunkow, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant Ahmad Al Alissa guilty of count number 47, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 48, Samuel Kilburn, extreme indifference, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Alissa, guilty of count number 48, attempt to commit murder in the first degree. And further, the prosecution did prove that the defendant used or possessed and threatened the use of a deadly weapon. Jury verdict count number 49, Ilan Shakti, assault in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Alissa, guilty of count number 49, assault in the first degree. Jury verdict count number 50, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Alissa, guilty of count number 50, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. And further, the defendant did possess the large capacity magazine during the commission of a specific crime, during the commission of murder in the first degree, as defined. Jury verdict count number 51, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Alissa, guilty of count number 51, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. And further, the defendant did possess the large capacity magazine during the commission of a specific crime, the commission of murder in the first degree as defined. Jury verdict count number 52, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Alissa, guilty of count number 52, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. The defendant did possess the large capacity magazine during the commission of a specific crime of murder in the first degree as defined. Jury verdict count number 53, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Alissa, guilty of count number 53, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. The defendant did possess the large capacity magazine during commission of a specified crime, murder in the first degree as defined. Jury verdict count number 54, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Alissa, guilty of count number 54, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. The defendant did possess the large capacity magazine during the commission of a specified crime, murder in the first degree as defined. Jury verdict count number 55, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. We, the jury, find the defendant, Ahmad Alissa, guilty of count number 55, possession of a large capacity magazine during the commission of a felony. The defendant did possess the large capacity magazine during the commission of a specified crime, murder in the first degree as defined. And juror number 3929. Are those your personal verdicts? Okay, I'm going to go through the rest of your juror numbers just in the order that they appear on my list, and I'll be asking each of you that same question. Juror number 3238, raise your hand. Were those your verdicts? Juror number 3743, raise your hand. Were those your verdicts? Juror number 3852, raise your hand. Were those your verdicts? Juror number 3712, raise your hand. Sir, were those your verdicts? Juror number 3129, were those your verdicts, ma'am? Juror number 4106, were those your verdicts? Juror number 3735, sir, were those your verdicts? And juror 2886, ma'am, were those your verdicts? How about 4357, ma'am, were those your verdicts? And juror 4116, sir, were those your verdicts? And last 2890, ma'am, were those your verdicts? All right. All right, folks. You have now completed your duties as jurors in this case, and you are discharged with the thanks of the court, the parties, everyone involved, your community. You have done a great service. The question may arise whether you may now discuss this case with the lawyers or other persons. For your guidance, the court instructs you that whether you talk to anyone is entirely your own decision. It is proper for others to discuss the case with you, and you may talk with them, but you need not. If you speak with them, you may tell them as much or as little as you like about your deliberations or the facts that influenced your decision or other information. If any person persists in discussion of the case over your objection or become critical of your service, either before or after any discussion has begun, please report it to me or my staff and see what we can do about that. So I'm going to have Mr. Collins take all of you back to the jury room. I'd like to come back and thank you personally. And I know that you're aware that we're going to have someone let you know about some resources that we have available to you, and they'll come in after I'm done. All right, please rise for the jury. All right, thank you. You may be seated. As I indicated, I'm going to go back and speak with them personally. I don't expect it should take too long, and then we will proceed to sentencing. Is there anything either side wants me to be aware of or I need to take up before I take this brief break?
Not from the people. Thank you, Your Honor.
And I would just ask if there's going to be anyone speaking to the court, that all comments are made directly to the court and not to my client.
You know, I've spoken with the victims about it already and told them that the court would direct them to make any comments they have to the court. And I think over the last 3.5 years, we've also, the victims follow the court orders all throughout. I think today will be any different in terms of that.
Okay, thank you. But for some reason, the mic is pointed towards me there at the lectern. If you want to fix that before we get started with the sentencing. Let's have you all back in here at 2:15 to get started. And if I'm running a little late, just be seated. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, and good afternoon again.
That much is clear seeing how many people were heartbroken over.
All right, we'll proceed to sentencing. Mr. Dougherty. I did receive 2 victim impact statements, and I've reviewed those.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good afternoon again. And that's the first point I wanted to address, actually, is there have been a couple of victim impact statements that have been filed with the court. I've informed victims who've been unable to make it to court today that if they file a victim impact statement today or tomorrow, I'm sure the court will review those as well, and they'll be made part of the file. We do have a number of victims who wish to address the court today as well. So with the court's permission, I'll start to call the victims up in order. I think the order that makes the most sense is to call them up in the order in which their loved one was killed.
All right, and then did someone also want to appear via WebEx?
So actually, they want to be able to watch over live stream, but they have decided to not speak over WebEx.
Okay.
So as long as the live stream's up and running, I think we're okay.
It is. Yes, sir. Okay.
Your Honor, on behalf of the family of Nevin Stanisic, I'm going to call up Nicolina Stanisic, please.
Thank you.
I just start. Okay. Okay. Hi, my name is Nicolina Stanisic. I am the sister of Nevin Stanisic. I have gone through multiple drafts and ways of how to write this in my head. I have so much I want to say. Okay. But I feel like there are not enough words to describe how I am feeling and what I want to state. This statement is also on the behalf of my parents as well. First and foremost in this statement, I think it's important to talk about who Nevin was. Nevin is not just another statistic of people who have lost their lives in a mass shooting. Nevin was also a person. Nevin had a life that he loved. He had people who he cherished and things he loved doing. He was just like any of us sitting in this courtroom today. The only thing is his life had been cut short without him even having a say in what happened to him or his life. That is why the majority of this statement will be about Nevin and who he was. He can no longer tell his story, but that doesn't mean that my parents and I cannot tell his story for him. Who he was will always live through us. We will not stop talking about him. I don't have to? Oh, okay. Nevin had been the first child of our parents, Radmilo and Mirjana Stanisic. They had him 1 year after they immigrated to the States. Something that sticks with me that my parents continuously say is Nevin je moja prva radost I prva tuga. That translates to Nevin was their first joy, first happiness, and their first sadness and heartbreak. No parent should have to grieve as I have watched my parents grieve over my brother. No parent should have to lose their child, especially in this way. No parent should have to bury their child 6 feet underground. My parents shouldn't have gone through this. My dad shouldn't have looked for my brother for over 7 hours, trying to see if he was alive, only to be told if he hadn't responded, then he was dead. My mom and I shouldn't have had to watch the news for over 7 hours, trying to see if we hear anything about him. Our parents always told stories about how when Nevin was a child, he loved playing with tools that our dad had. He would try to fix things around the apartment that they had lived in. There is a photo of Nevin when he was probably around 1 or 2, where he was holding a screwdriver and smiling. As he grew, he loved to take things apart and then try to put them back together. One of the stories I remember is our dad bought him a new Razor scooter. Nevin had it for 2 weeks before he dismantled it while our parents were at work. He even cut the wires. He tried to see if he could put it back together, which he couldn't. It was completely ruined. Through his teenage years and eventually into his early adulthood, his love for fixing things, most notably machines, only grew. Out of high school, he began to work with our dad. They would travel all around the state to fix coffee machines. In the weeks before him being killed, I remember one day he came home from work and his hands were completely stained blue from working on a slushy machine. He always found a way to get dirty, as our parents would say. Nevin had been my only sibling. We only had each other. As we grew older, we started to rely on each other more. He had become one of my best friends. I wish I got to tell him that more. I was very lucky to have had him as my older brother. He was always looking out for me. Even the same could be said when it came to our parents. When he started working, he would always try to help them with bills in any way he could. If I wanted to get ice cream with him, he would take me to get some, even if it was 9 p.m. I was lucky to have a brother who was so caring and who wanted me to succeed in anything that I wanted to do. We could talk to each other and tell jokes and even talk about some of the similar interests that we had. On Sunday night, the night before he was killed, we got to get ice cream together. I remember it being super spontaneous and it had been late. It was probably 9 p.m. Despite that, he had taken me to get ice cream. I would get a chocolate cone, and he would get a shake that had a little bit of coffee in it. That was the last time we got to hang out, and honestly, that had been the last time I saw him. In the car, he had told me about his plans for the upcoming week. He wanted to paint the basement and to hang out with his friends over the weekend. He never got to do either of those. He never got to do anything that he had planned to do. He never got to see us, his friends, or anyone else ever again. Nevin was such a caring, kind, and selfless person. He always looked out for those around him. He always made sure that they were okay before making sure he was okay. He loved going on hikes with his friends. He loved playing video games. He was someone who just loved life. He is someone who had an impact on so many people's lives. That much is clear seeing how many people were heartbroken over what had happened to him. There is so much to take away and to learn from who Nevin was. There is something that everyone could learn from him. He had been someone who was one of a kind. Nevin had his last birthday a month and 10 days before he was killed. He only got to be 23 for a month. When we think about our 20s, we think about living some of the best years that we will ever have. We think about living our youth and figure out who we are and who we want to be. Nevin wasn't able to do that. His youth, his life now cut short. When I think about how in October I will turn 23, my heart wants to break. How is a younger sibling supposed to become the same age as their older sibling? How is that fair? When we think about Nevin and him getting shot 5 times, our heart breaks. Just thinking about him and what he went through makes me want to cry and scream into a void. My parents have to live the rest of their lives knowing that their child has left this earth before them, that they have to somehow live without him. In no world should this be okay. In no world should parents have to bury their child because they were killed. In no world should we have to lose loved ones to mass shootings. To say our life has turned upside down would be an understatement. I don't even have words to describe how much our life has changed. Our life without Nevin is not a complete whole life. There is someone who is always missing, and that is him. In our household before, we would always talk to each other and laugh, and now there's barely anything to talk and laugh about. Most days it's silent. For as long as we are alive, we will talk about him and who he was. He deserves to be mentioned whenever possible. Just because he is in here doesn't mean that who he was should die too. In the end, I truly hope that he is somewhere out there and is okay. There are no words that could describe how much we love and miss him. There are no words to describe the grief that comes with when losing someone like this. I think for the rest of our lives, we will be asking why. When the defense attorneys mentioned Nevin's name in their slide during the closing statement, I felt angry. To use Nevin's name as some sort of gotcha moment because he could not run away or hide, to me, is crazy. Nevin could not do any of that because he was ready to leave. He had his seatbelt on, and the company received a signal that his car was on for a few seconds. I think it's shameful to use a victim, my brother, as a pawn to try to prove a point. If Nevin had a chance to do either of those options, he would have, but he didn't. Wouldn't Nevin try to save his life if he could? To the person who had done this, we have very few words for you. We hope that you suffer for the rest of your life. You are a coward. In your next life,
It's okay. Just do it.
oh, I can't write.
It's okay.
Okay. I hope this haunts the defendant until the end of time. The defendant deserves the absolute worst. We wish 10 times the amount of pain and suffering just so the defendant feels even an ounce of the pain that was inflicted onto Nevin that day.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
As Nicolina highlighted for the court, Nevin was 23 years old when he was murdered, Your Honor.
Thank you.
On behalf of Kevin Mahoney's family, Erica Mahoney and Ellen Mahoney are going to come up and speak. I don't know if they want to come up together or individually.
Thank you.
Hello. What's your name?
Ellen Mahoney.
Thank you.
I believe that everything we do in a lifetime matters, and we are accountable for the many right and wrong choices we make. There is no escaping it. I believe we are meant to be kind, respect others, and do good in the world. Two wrongs never make a right. I miss my husband, and my two children miss their dad. On the day of the shooting, I worried that my daughter, who was 6 months pregnant at the time, would lose her baby. And after driving back from the CU Event Center that evening, my son was crying so hard, I thought our car was going to plunge into Veely Lake. I'll never forget that horrible day and night. I'm so sorry for everyone who has suffered from this tragedy, especially the families who have been changed forever. The web of pain and sadness and loneliness is vast. I also know that love is always there for us. Love holds us up when we feel down. Love takes our hand and walks with us when we are lost and afraid. And love was definitely there that day. It showed up as the many brave human beings who risked their lives and converged on the store to be of help and save lives, because life is sacred. Over these past 3 years, many people have stood by us to give us strength and support, and I will always be grateful for this. They are our better angels. Yes, my family is very different now, but some things will never change. From the moment Erica and Drew were born, Kevin and I have cherished them. We love to see them grow into good people who care about others. Most of all, Kevin and I want to see them happy and enjoying their lives. We should remember that it's a gift to be here on earth. We can feel the wind in our hair, enjoy a good meal, and feel a hug. Sometimes we take this for granted and forget why we're even here. Most of us don't want to live in a violent world, and we need to work a lot harder to change this. I know that life goes on after death, and I fully believe that our loved ones are good and they are happy. I know that Kevin is with us even right now, and we are never alone. Dad is always just a thought away.
Good afternoon, Judge Bakke. My name is Erica Mahoney, and I'm Kevin Mahoney's daughter. On March 22nd, 2021, I was 6 months pregnant and working as the news director of a small NPR station in California. I was on the air when my mom called me not once, but twice. I had a bad feeling. She never called back to back like that while I was at work. And sadly, my intuition was right. I remember hearing the words active shooter and King Supers through the phone. Then Dad went grocery shopping. Destroyed, gutted, heartbroken are words that don't even begin to explain my emotions. I thought I was going to lose my baby. That's how upset I was. 12 hours later, my family got a call from the coroner's office at 3 a.m. confirming my father was actually really gone. I was so angry that night. I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed, my eyes swollen shut from sobbing for hours on end, and I imagined this very moment. I pictured myself in court speaking to the shooter. This was long before I even knew what a victim impact statement was. But what I wanted to say, amazingly, is the same thing I still want to say today. And that is, I wish the young man behind the gun had received more love in his life, because then maybe none of this would have happened. Growing up, my dad would play this hide and seek game we called Monster with my brother and me and the other neighborhood kids. It's one of my favorite childhood memories. He'd count to 100 while we ran and hid. The older we got, the farther we ventured. The goal was to get back to the milk box at our front door before he tagged us. The irony is clear. My dad was the opposite of a monster. He wanted her to fly. He deserved a peaceful ending. He was a good person, a rule follower, returning his shopping cart like we're all supposed to when the gunfire rang out. Until the trial, I prayed and hoped that my dad's final moments were painless, that he was oblivious to it all. However, as the footage portrayed, that was not the case. There was a chase. My dad fought hard to live, but there was nowhere to take cover, no milk box in the distance to sprint towards for safety. My dad didn't want to go. He had so much more life in him. I never could have imagined that he would have had to run for his life in the parking lot of King Supers. And for what? Why? I practically grew up inside King Supers. On Sundays, I loved joining my dad for the weekly shopping. We'd always see familiar and friendly faces like Terry Liker. I remember the grocery lists my dad scribbled on random pieces of scrap paper he found in our kitchen. We'd go up and down the aisles, crossing off each item as we put it into the shopping cart. My favorite aisle was the cereal aisle, and I'd beg my dad for the latest and greatest sugary breakfast, and sometimes I won. My dad was my North Star and continues to be. He was the best dad to my brother and me and a wonderful husband to my mom. I miss him every day. I needed more time. I had questions to ask him, questions I will never get the answer to now. When my dad died, I faced a mountain of a challenge. Being pregnant, I had to navigate death and life, grief and joy at the same time. I wish it upon no one. I suffered from crippling panic attacks that fastened me to the floor. I had a million intrusive thoughts, suicidal thoughts. At times, I couldn't go grocery shopping or leave my house. I had nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. Living like that sucks the life out of you. And no young mom should have to deal with that. It's the opposite of the American dream. But I climbed that mountain of a challenge, just like my father taught me the summer after my freshman year at college. I was having a hard time. I was lost. My dad's idea that summer was for us to hike all of the tallest peaks in Boulder County, just me and him. And it worked. I found myself. Today, I'm a mom of 2 beautiful children, and I'm a good mom, and I continue to be a good daughter. Sorry, mine's kind of long. Can I keep going? Okay.
You can keep going.
Okay. This trial has been brutal, but at times beautiful. The stories of survival and people helping each other get to safety highlight the good side of humanity. Those stories will stick with me for the rest of my life. I think of the woman who made my dad laugh before his final moments on earth. She is my angel. I'll never forget her talking about the thoughts that raced through her head as she crouched underneath her steering wheel in her car. She thought about her daughter. I know my dad thought about me too. I also think of the young man who went back into the store 4 times to save people, including Ree Shakti, who fell. Those actions are so much more powerful than the actions of the gunman. And I think of all the officers, especially Officer Eric Talley, who rushed in without a second of hesitancy, also a father. That's a hero. All of those people I mentioned are heroes. It bothered me when the defense attorney said there are no words when describing the pain and suffering. There are words, so many words to choose from, words that span language barriers. How about, I'm sorry? If we've never been denying he did it, then where's an apology? An iota of remorse from the defendant or his family would have gone a long way. The door is still open. Until then, I will start. I'm sorry for your suffering, past, present, and future. As I said earlier, I wish you would have gotten more love. The saddest thing is, had you pulled into the parking lot of King Soopers that day without a gun, gotten out of your car, and instead screamed, "I need help," my father would have been the first one at your side. He would have helped you like he helped me and so many others. He would have shown you love. This trial doesn't bring me closure. I never expected it to. But it has put the pieces of a very complicated puzzle together in a way that brings a sense of understanding, of facing and surviving yet again. What even is closure after something like this? What is justice? To me, justice is putting an end to mass shootings in America. I was in 3rd grade when Columbine happened. I had just graduated from college when the Aurora movie theater shooting happened and my mom's student died. I was a reporter in 2019 when I covered a shooting at a food festival in California for NPR. It all needs to stop. We all need to open our eyes. As I wrote in a Twitter post that day after the shooting, my dad represents all things love. I will never stop fighting for some good to come out of this. I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for the jurors, including the alternates who so diligently listened and worked together to make a decision. Thank you to the outstanding victim advocates who made this journey bearable, all my therapists who showed me a path forward, my wonderful friends who walked beside me, the community members of Boulder and beyond who showed up. Thank you, Michael Dougherty and his team, who are all absolutely fantastic people. Thank you, Judge Bakke. I respect you very much. I know you'll determine the appropriate sentencing and play a part in changing the future for the better by holding the defendant accountable. Every sentencing matters in the bigger fight. Finally, I need to express gratitude to the wonderful families that I've come to know and love who also lost their person. And most importantly, thank you to my father, the man who taught me to carve pumpkins, ride a bike, climb mountains, and to love ferociously. I will always be your little girl.
Thank you for that.
Your Honor, on behalf of Trelona, Barkowiak, I'm going to ask Star Barkowiak to come on up. And I know she's accompanied by, I believe, her brother, Chris Garado, and her fiance, Brian Kaju, is also here. Son, yes, sorry. I'm trying to read.
Dear Your Honor, my name is Star Barkowiak, mother of Trelona Barkowiak, who was murdered March 22nd, 2021 on the handicap ramp entrance into the Table Mesa King Soopers grocery store, Boulder, Colorado, along with 9 others by a shooter who made a choice to take lives.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to slow down just a bit so I can catch every word that you're saying. Thank you. Take your time.
Lana was my firstborn child, my daughter, and my best friend. She was the older sister to Lisa, Michael, and Chris. She was auntie to Myra and Caden. She was everything to us all. Her love was unconditional and available always. I miss her. We all miss her so much. The phone call I received asking me to try calling her because she wasn't answering her phone. I was told she was going to King Soopers to pick up a prescription. Reports of shots fired with possible fatalities. Oh my God. I called several times, no answer. Called all the family with brief explanation to call in hopes she would answer. Watching the whole time, every news channel on and all the YouTubes, hoping for a call back that she was okay. I called police, I called hospitals and was told only one person from the shooting was brought in. I called police again and again. Finally, I was told I could try the coroner's office. No, I was not going to do that. I sat and waited and already knew something that would destroy my family forever was coming. I was scared, terrified. I couldn't move away from the news, watching the same thing over and over again. 10 lives lost, names not released. Around 3:30 a.m., my phone rang. I answered with, "Please hang on." I walked to my son's room and sat on his bed. I could hear this alone. Go ahead. I can't remember anything. The absolute worst day of my life, screaming, crying, screaming, sobbing, screaming. My heart was bleeding inside my body. My head was pounding. My face was melting. I couldn't breathe. My chest was filling with cement. I had to make calls confirming the worst case scenario to my family. My daughter, your sister, your auntie, your granddaughter, your niece, your cousin was one of 10 lives lost in the Boulder Massacre. She was murdered. She is gone. We will never see her again, never hug her, never laugh with her, never nothing. There are no words for a loss of a child or any loved one in this manner. It is unexpected and impossible to believe it's real. The trauma is real and affects us all differently. I feel I have aged 20 years. My sleep consists of too many wake-ups. It took months to get past waking up and wishing it was a bad dream, then realized it was just another shitty day, learning to live with this broken heart that just doesn't heal. The tears I cry because I want her back. My entire family will never be the same. We mourn and continue to mourn. There is always emptiness that is unspoken. They say time heals all wounds, but not this one. Time has only helped us to learn how to control our emotions for longer periods of time, but I don't think so-called closure will ever come. From all the tributes left in front of the store Oomba, which she co-owned with her sister Lisa, and tributes posted on Facebook from so many she had touched in the Boulder community, along with all her lifelong friends, I was so proud of her. This love went on for days. The world was truly a better place with her in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, on behalf of Ricky Olds, I'm going to call up Lori Olds first, and then to be followed by Bob Olds.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
My name is Lori Olds. I've had the honor of being Ricky Lynn Olds' auntie for the 25 short years of her life. I was the baby of our family for 21 years before Ricky came along. She was the first baby I'd ever encountered in my life. And at 4 months old, Ricky's biological mom, my sister Chrissy, was no longer able to take care of her. So the family kicked in and I had the day shift, that poor baby. It was quite the adventure. Ricky's very first word was, "Oh shit," and it stuck with her all her life. I didn't ever know what to do, so just come to think of it, it could have been her last one too. Taking care of Ricky brought me and my children's father together. We enjoyed taking care of her so much, it wouldn't be long before we decided to have our own. She completely changed my life. Ricky was born with a spark of a pure heart, and she was beyond kind. She would go out of her way to make anyone smile. Once you met her, she changed your life. She brightened you up. She left a little bit of light with you. Her smile and willingness to be goofy at any cost to get that smile was one of her most unforgettable traits. The depth of personal pain and damage to our already broken family has been insurmountable. The next words I'm going to say, you have to listen fully before contemplating how in the world I can say it, let alone believe it. But I would like the court to know that I find forgiveness. I find forgiveness so that the laws of karma may be served and so that the pain will subside, but not. I know that you will be haunted and taunted for the rest of your days that you might live. I just pray that this brings some closure to our family. Thanks.
Thank you.
Your Honor, as I indicated, Bob Olds is going to come up next. And in addition to sharing his own remarks, I think he's also going to read a statement from Jeanette Olds.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Thanks for this opportunity. This is my mom's statement to the court. You have taken Ricky Olds from me. You have taken a very precious and loving person, my first grandchild. Ricky grew to become a very hardworking and independent young woman. Working and pursuing her goals, Ricky brought joy and laughter to our family. But all that ended on March 22nd, 2021, when you murdered her. We never knew what color Ricky's hair would be or what new tattoo or piercing she would have. Ricky's smile would light up the room. And because of your actions, we no longer get to experience those things or see Ricky again. You took a long time planning a mass shooting, and on March 22nd, 2021, you carried out that horrific plan, killing 10 people and victimizing a lot of others. You have been judged by the judicial system, but you will ultimately answer to a higher power, and you will pay for what you have done. I hope when you are sitting in your cell, you are tormented and haunted by what you did to all the victims. I hope you rot in hell. Thou shalt not kill Nevin Stanisic. Thou shalt not kill Kevin Mahoney. Thou shalt not kill Traylona Barkowiak. Thou shalt not kill Ricky Olds. Thou shalt not kill Denny Stong. Thou shalt not kill Lynn Murray. Thou shalt not kill Terry Leiker. Thou shalt not kill Jody Waters. Thou shalt not kill Suzanne Fountain. Thou shalt not kill Eric Talley. You were commanded by God, and yet you still brutally murdered 10 people. In your absurd claim, most likely developed by your attorneys, that you heard voices in your head, you ignored the most important one, God's. While my niece Ricky Olds and the other 9 victims you murdered suffered unimaginable terror, pain, and horror, it will fall far short of the suffering and eternal damnation that you will experience in hell. I have thought of many different ways to exact revenge for Ricky and the others, but I know that you will suffer. As Romans 12:19 tells us, do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. However, You are not alone in these heinous murders. Your family's ignorance, inattentiveness, and inaction directly led to 10 innocent lives being taken, and they too should be held criminally liable. The justice system and CMHIP are severely broken, as evidenced in this case. It is absolutely absurd that a murderer has more rights than the 10 souls that were brutally murdered on March 22nd, 2021. CMHIP's ineptness was obvious and glaring in their mismanagement starting December 2021. This murderer was competent and sane and only began his feigning of symptoms when he was placed into custody and in jail, as evidenced by Dr. Bender's review of treatment. Governor Polis also contributed to the countless delays and ineptness by not intervening and holding accountable his appointed secretary's ability to effectively manage CMHIP. Polis's office inattentiveness directly resulted in continual delays and further suffering of our families. The murder of my niece, Ricky Olds, at just 25 years old, has left a deep and unbearable void in our family and the lives of all who knew her. Ricky was full of life. Her laughter, kindness, and energy touched everyone around her. She was a young woman with dreams, a future, and so much more to give to the world. Her senseless murder has shattered our hearts and robbed us of a bright soul who had so much ahead of her. We now carry the heavy burden of her absence every day. Our loss is not only personal, but communal, as Ricky had a gift for connecting with others, leaving behind a legacy of love that was tragically cut short. In the midst of our grief, we take comfort in knowing that we will be with Ricky again one day. I strongly urge the court to sentence this murderer to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the brutal murder of my niece, Ricky Olds, and the 9 other innocent murder victims. The unimaginable pain and suffering caused by his ruthless act of violence has devastated not only our family, but the families of all the victims. Ricky and the other victims were taken from us in a moment of senseless cruelty, and there is no justification for allowing this murderer to ever walk free again. A life sentence without the possibility of parole is the only way to ensure that justice is served and that he is never given the opportunity to harm anyone else. And while no sentence can erase the heartache we carry, this punishment would bring some measure of closure, knowing that this murderer who took 10 lives will be held accountable for the rest of his.
Your Honor, Denny Stong was 20 years old. His parents, Lisa Allen and Nick Stong, were here when the verdicts were read, but then they needed to go, and just because they didn't want to be present for the sentencing, but they did just email me a victim impact statement and asked me to read it to the court. I will say, just to put it in context, as the court will recall from opening statements and then also from the evidence, Lisa Allen, Denny's mom, worked at King Soopers, and she was there that day. She was out in her car having lunch during her lunch break when her son Denny was gunned down brutally in the front area of King Soopers. And Lisa Allen asked me to pass along the following to the court. I lost 9 people I knew and worked with that day. The hardest was my son, Denny Stong. He was on his way to being a pilot. He was going to fly us everywhere. The defendant shot him in the back. The defendant is a coward. Your Honor, on behalf of Lynn Murray, Olivia McKenzie, her daughter, is here and wishes to make a statement to the court.
I wrote a shorter version, but I might read the longer one.
You
Seeing
do
how this has
whatever
gone.
You would like.
My name's Olivia. I'm here to talk about my mom, Lynn Marie Murray, or Lynn McKenzie, as most people remember her as. My mom, Lynn, was one of the coolest human beings I think I will ever know in my time here on Earth. And thinking about that and thinking about what to say here today, asking myself, who am I even speaking to? And thinking about where am I even speaking from? In the longer version I wrote, if I was to be speaking from year one, I don't think I would have really been able to peel myself off the floor to get up here to say anything. And in year two, I had exhausted my time. I probably wouldn't have had the energy. But year three is a little different. And I just want to talk about her. So I began to ask myself who I would be if I reached 62 years old like she did. And I thought about 62-year-old me, looking back on this and what I would say with her in mind. And it dawned on me that if I do get to 62, I will have lived more years without her, my mom, than I would have gotten to live, than I've had to live with her. And that reality really saddened me because the years that I got with her as my mom were amazing. And the years that I got with her as just who she was as Lynn, as those who were lucky enough to have had her in their lives, remember her as they reflect on those times as some of the best times of their lives, and that the era of their lives featuring Lynn and my dad, John, was some of their favorites. My mom was a strong woman, and strong in a way where you could sense she carried the feeling of love in her heart with every step she took, every word she spoke. And those of us lucky to remember what it was like being in her presence recall feeling just embodied by love, and not in a gushy way, in a way that makes you feel safe, seen, heard, and loved. She had no judgment. She had no ego. She was just cool. My mom protected us, and she would do anything for us. And she loved us in a way that I now realize I'm so lucky to have had, as not everyone has this. I felt like, and do still feel like, the luckiest daughter on earth to have been so lucky to have been her kid. We were so close, and as we grew older, she became my best friend. It also became part of my life's mission to protect her and to help give her a happy life. And as times fell hard on my parents in their later years. And writing that hurts because on March 22nd, 2021, at around 3 o'clock, when my dad called me to tell me what was happening, and my mom was inside the store, I felt that strong connection to her that was silently humming in the background of my life, almost like an invisible cord that connected us. One that streamed inklings of when to call each other or when the other one was hurting. I felt it change. I couldn't feel her anymore. She was no longer here, and I could feel it. I broke out screaming, and my dad asked me to be strong. Be strong for mom, he said. I reactively thought, be strong for mom? Be strong for her? She's dead. I couldn't feel her anymore. But in full denial of what I was feeling, my mission to protect her and to save her like she would do for us carried me down the mountain that day. I was up in the mountains and my leg was broken. I was recovering from an injury. And we found out she was in the store because, by a miracle, my childhood friend that I grew up in Florida with was in the store, and she had left at 2:22, probably just passing the shooter. She saw my mom in the store, and she got home, and her sister called her to make sure she was okay, and she looked at her mom and said, "Lynn's inside. I just saw her." And came a telephone. She called my dad, and my dad called me, and he said he was going to come get me, but I couldn't wait. And I knew she was gone, but I was in denial. And I used my crutches to beat the snow off my car to get down from Netherland, and was stopped at Baseline on Broadway and was asked who I was looking for. And I remember the look of the cop when I said who I was looking for. It was like he knew. And I kind of felt that. I went to the event center. I did everything I could for her that day. My brother was at the store, confused why helicopters were surrounding the store and nobody was going in, why there were no ambulances. We all waited for hours that day. I died that day too. Everyone in my family did. And in fact, that statement would become so true for my father, who could only take the heartbreak for so long. I watched my strong father, who was the life of the party and the most vivacious and hilariously fun dad growing up, lose his spark and his light that he had even in the years we were apart. But after that day, I watched it fade until almost a year later, I got a call letting me know that it had gone out completely. And then there I was. And here I am, no one's daughter, no one who is alive anyway. They are no longer here to make more of the memories that will be the best of anyone's lives. My future kids won't get to have the amazing grandparents I was so excited to see them be, sort of to selfishly relive my childhood through them, because it was the best. I do not know how I'm going to make more of the best of times from here on out. I wish they were alive here in the flesh to create more times with me and my brother more than anything, but they're not. They're here in a different way, a way which I hope that if and when I do get to 62 like my mom got to, or even 61 as my dad got to, I will hopefully be satisfied with. I want to create more of the best with them in my heart for the rest of my life. I hope that I will look back at this opportunity I have now to say something, smiling that I chose the right words. I'm now closer to them and to this event in time, and I'm still navigating the fallout. And if I get there, I'll be so far away in time. I will have lived more of my life without them, and I'm struggling to imagine that still. Remembering them helps. Remembering how they left hurts. I chose to talk about and remember my mom, Lynn, and now even my dad, John, as the fun and madly loving parents to the brother, Pierce, and I, as the hilarious life of the party friends who easily felt like family to their friends, as the compassionate coworker to whoever they worked with, and the gentle and wise stranger she was to anyone she crossed paths with, and the hilarious, witty stranger he was to anyone he crossed paths with. Lynn Marie Murray Mackenzie was and always will be magical beyond words. And Mom, I'm so grateful to have been and continue to be your daughter. It's an honor, and I'm so lucky. I love seeing you and me when I look in the mirror or say the word cool, as she used to say it, and hearing and seeing Dad and Pierce too. I don't have parents anymore because of this. We love you more than words, and if you're watching, just know that even if I do get to live as long as you, every single day will be lived with your memory as my guidance. And briefly, I want to say a piece on sentencing. Why shouldn't he get a life sentence? As a friend put this to me the other day, he has given me and all of us a life sentence. I've been sentenced to a life without my mom and now my dad. He has given us a life sentence, robbing us of family. Why should he get any less? That's it.
Thank you.
Your Honor, on behalf of Terry Leiker and Terry's family, Margie Whittington, Terry's mom is going to come up.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I hope I can get through this like everybody else hoped they could. My name is Margie Whittington.
Margie, take your time.
Yeah, I'm a mother. I have 2 children. My son is Kevin. He's 63 years old. He's married, and he has an adult daughter who's a teacher. My daughter is Terry Leiker. Her birthday is May 25th, 1969. If she had not been murdered by the defendant, she would be 55 now. I thank God every day that I have a choice to talk to my son, his family, and my husband, Tom, who was an amazing daddy to Terry since she was 3 years old. They are blessings to me. A little about Terry. She was born with mild brain damage caused by anesthetic I had during surgery when I was 6 weeks pregnant with her.
When she was in grade school and high school, she attended special education classes and graduated from Longmont High School. The problems she had with her brain damage was she couldn't comprehend abstract thinking like time and money. She could read, she could write, she could keep a calendar, she could keep her home spotless. She was hired by Table Mesa King Soopers on February 23rd, 1989, had been working there as a courtesy clerk for 32 years. When she was murdered, she did not drive and depended on Via Mobility to take her to work every day. She had a smile on her face most of the time. She loved many people, her Via drivers, co-workers, customers, and her friends. She especially loved her immediate family and her extended family, and they loved her. She was almost always, like I said, happy, smiling, content in her own skin. She was very outgoing, loved travel, flying, and having fun. She attended almost every CU stampede on Pearl Street, cheering for the CU Buffs football team. She especially loved the CU marching band. There is a lot of media attention to her. I won't get into all of the things that I could, but she is on the internet if you want to know all of the things and how she contributed to the Boulder community. You'll be surprised, as I was surprised. Since Terry was murdered, our family suffered by not being able to see her, talk to her, see her smile, have her say, "Mom, look at those flat irons. I love my condo and living in Boulder," and to share with her the many wonderful, wonderful things she loved. We want the shooter to know this murder has changed us. We will never be the same. We will never get over losing her, especially in such a horrible way. All of the other 9 murder victims will be with us as well. We will not say anything about the shooter more than that as to how we have been affected. Terry's accomplishments overcoming mild cognitive issues did not stop her from being happy, becoming a model citizen, owning her own condo, and having many friends. Her issues certainly did not make her evil. The shooter has not won. We will not live the way we would have if Terry was still with us, but we will go forward with our love for her and cherish the great happy memories we have of being at her for 51 years. This is, I think this is maybe kind of silly to do, but I was reading somewhere about a quote. Here's a quote from Will Reed, who's the son of Christopher and Dana Reed, made after the death of his mother from cancer. "Grief is permanent. The people we love, who we lose, are gone forever from this earth. But we carry their memories, their spirit, and their values with us forever. And by orienting ourselves around the love that we feel for those we have lost, we honor them. And that helps us heal," as a quote. Life after Terry has been devastating, but we are not devastated. Love is forever. My heart and love is with all of the other 9 people who were victims in these murders. Our families are forever bonded together.
Your Honor, on behalf of Jody Waters' family, I'm going to ask Denise Donnell to come up. She's a victim family designee, speaking on behalf of Jody Waters' family.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
I am here for myself and for my friend Jody Waters. Her life may have ended that dreaded day, but not her soul. Her soul was not killed, so she won. Your Honor, I heard the shooter asked to speak to his mom. Jody's girls will never have that opportunity because that was taken away from them. Here are some letters written to Jody from her girls. I could not have said these sweet things any better. There are no words for today except that she was too good for this world. Someone so real, so pure, so loving, so selfless, compassionate and kind. The only thing that could take our mom down was someone else's hurt and anger. I hope she is free. We love you and miss you so much, Mom. On another day, Alex wrote, I could only hope she is laughing in a field of wildflowers today. I miss her so much. I love you, Mom. Happy birthday. My daughter wrote back and said, she is most definitely laughing in a field full of flowers and will be with you all day long. Love you. And I said, she is the wildflower, because she was. On another day, Alex wrote, it has been 2 weeks since my sister and I last spoke to our mom, and 2 weeks since she was taken from us. There will never be anything that will make it okay. There will never be a day that goes by that I don't wish we could have said goodbye or given her one last hug. I can only hope she knew how much my sister and I loved her and would do anything to protect her. The only thing I am sure of in all of this is that I was fortunate enough to have an angel by my side for 34 years. We miss her every second of every day, but today marks the darkest day and the beginning of the time I don't wish upon anyone. 2 years ago this morning, I had my last conversation with her. And ever since, I replay it over and over, hoping I never forget exactly what she said to me. The thing about my mom was, most conversations with her were reflective, deep, and had great lessons hidden throughout. That was our conversation that morning. And I have to try to hold on to, as I hope she did too on this day 2 years ago. Today marks 3 years without my mom. This picture of her at my wedding is how I see her, and the note card of advice for becoming a mom myself she wrote me at the baby shower is now how I hear her. She was calm, she was quiet, she was strong. She always thought before she spoke, and the wisest person I have ever met. Even as unbelievably painful as this day is and represents such darkness in this world, I will always celebrate her life today and the person she was and continues to be for my sister and I. Jody was my person, and to so many others. But now she is gone, and how do we live without her? We were all supposed to grow old together, laughing most of the time throughout, but her laughter was silenced. So senseless, so unnecessary, so preventable. Take care of your children for their sakes, and in this case, for all the lives harmed and ended. If you like someone, tell them. If you love someone, tell them often, every day. If you are angry, fighting, make up. Talk it out and forgive, because Jody did. This has taught me time is so precious. So don't hesitate, don't wait. Make mistakes, live your life, and laugh often. Jody did. Jody and I laughed so much. She loved that I was funny, and I loved that she tolerated my bad jokes. She would have been the first person to help the shooter. She helped my son. She helped all the girls. Alex and Channing's friends loved her and considered her to be their best friend. She was a best friend, a best mom, the best person. She had so many friends. Everyone knew her, and applause. She dressed Boulder in TT Mars. Little side joke. Everyone, human and animal, loved her. She listened with intensity and answered with her heart. And she was always right. And she will never be forgotten. To Alex, Channing, Corey, Chuck, Everett, Emmy, Prince and Charlotte, Ryobi, Fred, and Ben, and so many others. We'll never forget you. To my family behind me, who has become my family, and the supporters of all of us, I really have asked the question, what now? We've been waiting for such a long time, and here we are. What do we do now? So the other day, I was having a massage with Boulder Strong. And this beautiful massage therapist was telling me, because I think she could feel my worry and my stress and how to move forward. And she said, you know, in yoga, breath is the most important thing. We strive for the perfect breath and breath all the time. But really, all you need is one breath. And I thought that made so much sense to me. And that's how I think we have to move forward, just with one breath. So Jesus said to them, because of your unbelief, for assuredly, I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. So I say that to all the victims' families. We have to move our mountain now, and we have to take that mustard seed and that one breath to try to walk and honor the people that we love and lost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, Suzanne Fountain was the 9th person killed by the defendant. Her family was here for most of the trial. They're not in the courtroom today, but I know they're watching online. They don't wish to make a statement to the court. I will just say that, like the other 9 victims, Suzanne Fountain was a really incredible person. By all accounts, she was amazing, wonderful, and talented. And we've been denied the privilege of ever meeting Suzanne Fountain because of the defendant. She had an incredible impact on the community and on her family, and it's a true loss for them and for this entire community that she was killed on March 22nd, 2021. Now I'll turn to the 10th victim, Eric Talley. We have a number of people who want to address the court, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
I think they're going to come up one by one, and I'll call up Judy Talley first.
Judge Bucky, I'm Judy Talley. I'm Eric Talley's mom, or mommy, as he called me all 51 years of his life, even though his friends and family made fun of him for it. He only said it when he really needed sympathy or something from me, but thank you for this opportunity. I have two children, my son Eric and my daughter Kirsten. My kids were raised in the late 60s and early 70s. Everybody in here is too young to remember this, I think, but there was a theme that was around that time period. It was called The Free to Be You and Me. It was Marlo Thomas, and there were records and books, and both my kids loved that. William wants a doll because he's going to be a daddy someday. There were all kinds of wonderful songs on there. My daughter's cringing behind me. Our kids were taught that the world held millions of possibilities for their lives, that they were free to make their own choices, but they had to accept that there were consequences for each choice that they made. Eric loved the Choose Your Own Adventure series of books. By reading those books by page 10 or 15, the story would stop and it would ask you to make a decision. If, for example, if you want to go to the creek, turn to page 32. If you want to go to the mountain, stay on this page and keep reading. And every choice that you make sometimes could have wonderful consequences and sometimes would have disastrous ones. Eric would come to me repeatedly and say, well, what would you do, Mommy? I'm like, no, Eric, it's your book, buddy. You got to decide. And he's so disappointed when it didn't go the right way. So he'd reread the book and make a different choice. Somehow I think the Alissas forgot to teach that to Ahmad, that he was free to do anything he wanted to do, just like everyone else on this planet. But there are consequences for, I didn't do it. There are consequences for his actions. And it angers me that his attorneys didn't let him know that and help him do the right thing that would have protected all of us from 3.5 years of pure brutal hell and 3.5 years of torture for their client as well, by saying, man up. You did it. You were sane. You planned it for months and you carried out your mission. I actually know defense attorneys that have those ethics and morals, but they're not in this room. Okay.
It's okay.
No,
I know.
I'll stop. I didn't think anything could make my pain worse until I suffered the disdain and lack of respect, even passing me in the hallway when I was sobbing because of their defendant. I was 19 when I had Eric. I was a kid myself. We grew up together, essentially. And thanks to Ahmad Alissa and that video, I saw my son take his last breath. And I think even a nod could have been helpful. Ahmad had a game plan and he carried it out. And I want him to know, Your Honor, that maybe he thought he put out Eric's light. He didn't. Ahmad lived his life and made his choices. And Eric lived because he loved math. I actually figured it out. I don't like math, Eric did. Eric lived 18,805 days on this planet. And he loved his family and his 7 beautiful children. We talked on the phone every day. He would call me and say, Mom, it's your number one son, Eric. I'd say, Eric, I only have one son. And he would say, I know, but if you had 1 million sons lined all the way to the moon and back, I'd still be your number one. And I'd say, of course you would. You're my Baba. You're my Eric. Of course you would. We were talking on the phone on March the 22nd. First he called, still griping about the fact that Dr. Seuss's books were being banned and it irritated him. And then he was just livid that he couldn't get the spicy chicken sandwich at McDonald's because they weren't carrying it that day. And then we were talking about spring coming and our multiple broken sprinkler systems. And he said, Mom, I'm dispatched. I gotta go. And I said, Eric, be careful. He said, always. I'll call you on the way home. I love you, Mom. And I came back with our standard, and I love you more. I ran in the house and I'm like, something's happening in Boulder, something's happening in Eric's area. And I'm scanning the news and my daughter called and she's like, Mom, is Eric at work today? And we're both, she's watching it in Washington, I'm watching it here. We're going back and forth. I'm like, no, that's not him. That's not him. And I saw the footage, that man that he was making outside. And then my phone rang on the other line. And it was one of the 7 beautiful children my son and Leah have. And I saw on my phone, Eric, and I used to tell Eric, do you not understand why you have 7 children? Why do you not get it? You didn't have to have 7. He said, oh, Mom, then we would have missed this one or that one. But on my phone, it said the tally litter because Eric decided that he had a full litter then. So I tried to get off my fear hat and said, get on my Nana hat and said, hi, honey. And I hear this scream, Nana, Daddy's dead. It cut my life in half. I felt the most incredible physical, emotional pain. I was screaming and yelling, Eric, Eric, as if I could call him back. All the times he would get ahead of me on the path hiking. Eric, if you don't see me, I don't see you. You gotta keep an eye. No. I couldn't even be a good Nana at that moment. I was just Eric's mom. My partner, Pat, did not know what to do. I'm crawling on our den floor, just screaming. And then Kirsten, oh my God, my daughter. I ran outside to call Kirsten, but I was still so hysterical. And her response to me was a scream. And who killed my brother? Yeah, you right there. You did. A few days after Eric's funerals, my youngest grandson, who was 6 at the time, was so confused. He'd gone out trying to build a special rocket ship that maybe could get him up to his dad. All the kids were in such torture that their daddy was dead. And a sweet little boy, he came to me and he said, Nana, is that bad? Is that evil monster gonna get out of jail and come kill mommy and all of us? And I said, no, baby, no. I said, that man will be in a cage the rest of his life. He'll never hurt any of you or anyone ever again. You're safe from him. You're safe from him. I beg you, Your Honor, to lock Ahmad Alissa up in prison for the rest of his life with no possibility for parole. Send this message to all the wannabe mass murderers out there that troll the internet to see the consequences for those that have committed the acts they're thinking about doing. Let them see that justice can still be served. There are consequences for the choices we make. Sorry you didn't get to read the Choose Your Own Adventure book, Ahmad, but to the defense, Your Honor, I would like the defense to know that I feel they tried to bury us for 3.5 years. They exacerbated our grief with delay after delay after delay after delay. They thought they could bury us. They didn't know that Michael and Ken were seeds, and they rose up strong and tall, and they never missed a beat, supporting all of us and all of Boulder and all the victim families. God bless you both, and thank you for that. Thank you.
Your Honor, the next member of the Talley family who would like to speak is Shay Talley.
Thank you, Judge, for allowing me to speak.
Of course.
I want to say that the convicted and I are different. We come from different backgrounds, different cultures, and we have different gods. The name of my God is Yahweh, Elohim, Adonai, El Shaddai, Emmanuel, Jesus of Nazareth, and Jesus the Christ. On the afternoon of March 22nd, 2021, I was watching the news of the mass shooting in Boulder, 800 miles away in Texas. I said to my wife, I hope Eric is okay. About 5 minutes later, the phone rang. All I heard on the other end was sobbing. I kept asking the phone, is Eric okay? Finally, my granddaughter answered, and she was 16 at the time. And she said 2 words, Dad's dead. I was shocked and confused. And after we hung up, I took a walk. And I asked my God, why? I received a 1-word answer from him, forgive. As I learned more details about what had happened, my heart began to fill with a substance much like used motor oil. Thick and black, my heart became filled with hate, anger, revenge, and even murder. In the Bible, God does not ask us to forgive our enemies. He doesn't suggest we forgive our enemies. He commands us to forgive our enemies. And by any metric, the convicted is my enemy. But forgiveness does not override justice, and justice does not exclude forgiveness. They can and do coexist. But justice is a matter of law, and forgiveness is a matter of the heart. Justice demands the guilty be punished, which I ask you to do. Sentence him to the maximum sentence. But forgiveness requires us to examine our own hearts. The image of my son's brains and blood splattered on a grocery store floor will be with me forever. But I still choose to forgive. You know, Eric would want us to forgive. He was a very forgiving person, except for that Tom Brady and Flakegate thing. He wouldn't let that go. I argued with him over and over. You've got to just be graceful, Eric. No, he should admit he did wrong and ask for forgiveness himself. But at any rate, after I forgave the convicted, almost immediately the motor oil in my heart began to leave. My God took all that darkness from me and washed my heart with the pure water of his love and truth. The benefits of forgiveness may help the one who's forgiving, or they may not. I don't know. I have no control over that. But the benefits are enormous for the one who is forgiving. The poison as my heart is removed, the weight of Alissa's sin is no longer a part of me, and I'm now free of him, and I can live my life unburdened. But there's another type of forgiveness I want to address, and that is forgiving ourselves. There are a number of people here within the sound of my voice who bear an unnecessary pain. They blame themselves for their loved one's death. If only I'd gone King Super that day, they may say, or I should have gone with them, or maybe I could have saved them. These are understandable sentiments, but in the end, They damage the ones who hold these thoughts. What would the world be like if we all wore forgiveness on our foreheads rather than in our back pockets with our dirty hankies? And I know that Alissa one day will die, because we all die. Maybe he will die soon, or maybe he'll live a long life in prison. I don't know. But whatever, one day he will die. And when he does, he'll find himself kneeling before my God. And my God will say to him, Ahmad, stand up. I have a list of sins before me that you have committed. How do you plead? And then, depending on how he answers, he will either face the wrath of a holy God, or he will be welcomed into his presence. You know, my son called me many times, but several times he called and he said that he would lay down his life for his brothers and sisters in the Boulder Police Department. I think we should celebrate his bravery. We should ask ourselves, what man or woman would do that for not only the family of the Boulder Police Department, but for complete strangers? He was protecting his community, and he was serious about it. I'll never forget that he told me one time, he was talking to me on the phone, and he said, I arrest a lot of bad people here. And he says, people making bad decisions. But he says, I want to thank you for the way you raised me. Because I realize if you hadn't, I could be one of these guys I'm arresting. I'll always hold that dear to my heart. And with that, I say goodbye. Goodbye to Ahmad, goodbye to this court, and with time, goodbye to the lingering pain in my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, Kirsten Brooks would like to address the court next.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
I inadvertently brought Eric into the courtroom today because I was sitting on his grave when I got a text from Mr. Mahoney's daughter that the verdict had come in, and somebody pointed out that I had grass on the back of my skirt. So Eric, who was telling me, because I hear him all the time, what are you worried about? Be respectful. Dragged him in here. My dog is in the car. I wasn't sure there would be a verdict today. I didn't know when that would happen. I'm Eric's little sister. I'm his only sister. I was adored by Eric my entire life. I was also tormented by Eric because he liked to just do things like tie me to the back of his bike and drag me around on my roller skates and practice his karate moves on me. I'm not my brother. I was never as brave as Eric. Whenever I had to call the police, which was often where I was living, I would call him first, and he would call the police where I lived. One of our arguments we had before he died was about, it went like this: Kirsten, somebody breaks into your house, what do you do? I cry if I step on a roly-poly. I apologize to its parents. I apologize to the universe. My brother said, what would you do? You have a daughter. What would you do if someone broke into your home? And I said, I'm a licensed mental health professional. and I work and have worked for years with people with schizophrenia and mental illness. And I think I would start to ask them, why are you there? And are you okay? Are you lost? Are you high? No, Kirsten, no. If you had a gun, what would you do? I'm like, drop it, shoot him in the foot. And Eric was so clear. He said, you shoot him in the head. I said, you should, what? He said, yeah, they're there to end you. You end them. And my father said it much more eloquently. I am neither of my parents, although I adore them. But I am my own person, obviously. But Eric, in laying down his life for others, the way he said it to me was there is something worse than death. And that's standing there with my thumb up my ass while my other police officers are killed because I'm standing there. And he said, I would never want that to happen to me. I would want to be the brave one. I would want to make sure that I delivered justice. I want everyone to know that that day, although it makes no sense, was Eric's day to get off the train of life. It was Eric's stop. Mr. Alissa murdered my brother. He admitted that he targeted him and he shot him in the head and the leg. And Eric left this earth, and I believe before he did, I have no other explanation for why all of these other beautiful officers were not shot, except that Eric was flying around and protecting them the best he could before he took off. I miss him. I hear him all the time. I have been with 3.5 years following this court process closely because of my patients, the human beings that I love and treat daily. Because I recognize that that is not the person who killed my brother. And I'm so thankful. I'm thankful for the prosecution, for their fierceness, for their straightforwardness. I have yelled at this man many times. I thought Ken was his henchman when I first saw them on Zoom, and I wanted to know why he had to have a bodyguard to talk to me. I have learned a lot about the court process. On March 22nd, 2021, I truly believed that the only hero I've ever known left this earth. That the reason my mother had a hat when I was little that was called the silent hat, because she wanted Eric to shut up so she could study. And I know I probably talked too, but not as much as Eric. I always won the silent game with him. He talked so much, and there isn't a police officer in there who knows him that disagrees with me on that. He was the only brother I have. My daughter lost her only uncle. My family has become small. On the day of his funeral, I had to pull his little son off the coffin because he was begging me to wake up his dad. My life has changed, and the blood that was on that floor of the grocery store was my blood, because that's my brother. I never knew this earth without Eric. Mr. Alissa has stolen everything. Beautiful. Eric didn't get to say goodbye. He didn't get to hug his kids. He didn't get to yell at me about why I can't get Alexa to get my microwave to work. He took my parents' only son. He took David's best friend. We had a childhood of love and beauty. And I want the court to know that every single person that Ahmad Alissa killed that day would have been his friend. They would have helped him if he'd asked. Not me. Not me. I have studied for years and worked with violence. I would have had a different approach. I don't need to forgive Ahmad Alissa because he has not asked me for forgiveness. I don't need to forgive myself because that was my brother's day to die. And I don't need to know why. My hatred for him is vast, for Ahmad. It is not a hatred that comes from not forgiving again. He didn't ask. It is a hatred for what he has done. It is a hatred that I wish. I don't see a conscience in this man. I don't expect him to understand or even care what we say. But I wish that he would, at one point in his life, perhaps come to a space of wanting to say he was sorry. And maybe he has tried to say that. I don't know. I would like again just to thank everybody here for listening to us, for being here for my family. And Judge Bakke, I have watched you on Zoom. You have been so fair. You have been so good. My brother loved the book To Kill a Mockingbird, and he loved history, and he believed in the court, and he believed in law. And even though I had so much anxiety about how this would come out, a few hours ago when I was sitting on his grave, I heard him, and I hear him a lot, say, "What are you worried about? What are you worried about? It's okay." And I had peace in my heart. He's still here. They're all still here. We have one beautiful life. One beautiful life. Eric lived his fully. And I'd like his children to speak. Thank you.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, retired Officer Trudy Hunter would like to address the court. She was very close with Eric Talley and also on behalf of the Boulder Police Department.
Hello, Your Honor.
Hello.
I want to thank you, the DA and the team, the jury, the victim advocates, everyone that has helped the victims' families, friends, and colleagues through this long and trying nightmare. As the DA said, I'm retired, Watch 2 Boulder police officer, Trudy Hunter. And I would just like to share how the King Super shooting that occurred on March 22nd, 2021 has affected the Boulder Police Department and myself. The men and the women of the Boulder Police Department are some of the finest people and friends I've ever known. I had the pleasure to work with them March 22nd, 2021. It was just a normal day for the police officers working that day until it wasn't. Watch 1 and every watch, it begins with putting on the uniform and taking call after call for service for the community we love and want to protect. We try to do our very best on each and every call. For Watch 1, their shift was almost over. And for Watch 2, their shift was just starting. March 22nd, 2021 changed the lives of everyone within the Boulder Police Department. Officers that were on scene and the Boulder police personnel would never totally be the same. It was a devastating, horrific event, which we all have been trained for, but it happened. But when it happens, it is a lasting traumatic event in everyone's mind. Several officers and sergeants retired from the department, and numerous of them came out with PTSD and ongoing therapy. I would like to tell you a little bit about my story and Eric Talley, who was one of my best friends. He was a colleague and a brother in blue. Eric and I worked together for 10 years and worked Watch 2 and had the same district or adjacent district. We covered each other on several calls every night. Eric liked to talk to people, and sometimes for too long, in my mind. So I would always be trying to pull him out of a call so we could go do another call. But this just shows how much he enjoyed his job and how much he enjoyed helping people, and would always go the extra mile. Eric wanted to go to day shift for his family and wanted me to follow. I thought long and hard, but I am a true night person and live in Larimer County. I told him I just couldn't get up at 4 a.m. every morning. One day I came into work and I noticed he had been on a call at Broadway and Table Mesa for a while. So I went up to see if I could help him. When I got there, he was pointing and telling me he had to get the baby ducks out of the creek. And so I started to help him. And before you know it, I had to go, got dispatched another call. I later found out that he'd gotten all the baby ducks out of the creek safely, and he had gotten recognized and a write-up in the paper for saving the baby ducks. This just goes to show you how much Eric loved people and animals. Eric loved his family. He would do anything for them, including his mother and father and sister. Eric would work so much overtime to provide for his family that we could hardly get together after work or on our days off. He would talk to his mother several times a day and would go down to New Mexico to help her with whatever she needed help with. He would go down to his father's property in Texas and help him with everything, anything he needed fixing. Sorry, I gotta take a drink. We became the best of friends. We had the same work ethics. We had similar personalities, and we loved being a Boulder police officer for the city of Boulder. Eric and I would play practical jokes on each other, from hiding around corners and trying to scare the wits out of each other, to our special jiggle dance in full uniform and hugs that would almost knock each other over. We would take our lunch breaks together as often as we could if the call load allowed, and if we were not on a call or at the jail. During our lunch breaks, we would play all sorts of board games and card games. This was one more thing we had in common, except Eric had 500 games at home, which was way more than I had. We would ask Officer Mitch Trujillo to play games with us, and the three of us continued that as much as we could. But once Mitch started playing, the two of them ganged up on me so that one of them would win. Later, I found out from his children that Eric would make up his own rules So I would have to watch him. And when I would catch him doing it, he would laugh so hard. Then I'd punch him in the arm. And in turn, he would call his mom, Judy Talley, and cry to her about me punching him. Judy would be on speaker and we would both plead our cases, and she would always take my side because she knew Eric all too well. Eric was also my IT guy at work and even outside of work. One day my mother's internet went down. Sorry, my mom passed right at the beginning of this trial, so I'm even more emotional. I went up, her internet went down and I just couldn't figure out how to get it working. So I called Eric and he tried to help me over the phone, but I still couldn't figure it out. He asked me for my mom's address, and the next thing I knew, he was at the front door and fixed it in 5 minutes. Eric and I would talk about life and helping each other out. On the day of March 22nd, 2021, I was walking into watch debriefing and saw Eric at the lunch room eating. I went up to him and gave him a big hug and asked him when we were going to have game night. And he said he would, when he got back from his mother's house, Eric was going down to help her for a couple weeks. And that was the last time I saw my best friend alive. And that day changed my life forever. I came out of briefing at about 14:35 hours. Then my car partner told me there was a mass shooting at King Soopers. And I said, which one? And he said, on Table Mesa. We rode together, lights and sirens, to the scene. There were police officers everywhere. And we blocked the southwest entrance to the parking lot because we were told there were 3 suspects and we're told to stay there. While on scene, we were told there was an officer down, and then later told that we did not have to go in, meaning whichever officer was down was dead. There was so much going on and SWAT teams everywhere. It was chaotic, very stressful, intense situation, to say the least. I had not heard from Eric on the radio and was a little worried. When I was released from the scene, Officer Trujillo called me and told me to report to the PD. At that moment, I knew Eric had been shot and killed. That night, Officer Trujillo and I drove and talked to Lee and the children and advised them that we were the department liaison. As a liaison and a personal friend of the family, we talked. We helped with 2 funerals with the Fallen Heroes Foundation. There was a lot of planning and logistics that goes on into a death of a police officer. And for Eric, we were arranging 2 different funerals, one for the family, one for the police officers who wanted to be there at the second funeral. We had to arrange photos of Eric. We had to go through his locker to get his belongings. So we could get, belongings so we could give them to his family. We had to get his dress blue uniform. We had to look for a gun belt he was wearing the day of his death to create a new gun belt because that one was obviously in property and evidence. To say the least, all of that was heart-wrenching and full of emotion and ongoing tears. After the funeral, our liaison duties continued for 3 years, helping the family with their pension, life insurance, death benefits, arranging several award ceremonies. Officer Trujillo and I were honored to go to Washington, DC, National Police Week, where all of the fallen heroes across the United States are recognized and given an award. Officer Trujillo and I were honored to accept the award for the family. Officer Eric Talley was honored with the Unity 2022 bike tour that year. And he was also put on the police wall and into the police museum. Off duty, our duties continued. We continued to help Eric's mother, father, and sister with funding to help them come from out of state to important trials and court dates. After this, I was finally able to grieve my best friend. My life changed forever. I tried to come back to work, but I was broken. I did not know what was happening to me. I thought I was losing my mind. I could not sleep. I could not concentrate. I could not remember things. I could not control my thoughts or my feelings about that horrific day and losing Eric. I had so much guilt and thoughts that I should have gone to day shift so I could have been right by Eric's side. I told myself he would still be alive if I had been there to save him. I felt bad that I was letting my colleagues down for not being able to work. I was in a dark hole and had to get professional help and was diagnosed with PTSD, which caused me to retire after 30 years of working on the streets for a job I loved. I had to say goodbye to all my brothers and sisters in blue. Sorry, I can't read with tears in my eyes. I'm still having some problems, and I'm not the same person as I used to be. I miss my best friend. And I respectfully ask for the maximum sentence with no parole. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, next, Madeline Talley would like to address the court.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Hello.
I want to thank you, Judge Baki, as well as the jury, Michael, Ken, and the prosecution team for their dedication in pursuing justice for this case. I have so many stories about my dad. I could spend hours talking about him and what a good father he was. I could tell you countless stories about how he would come back in the middle of the night from work and leave books under my covers or by my head to find when I woke up. I could tell you of the animated conversations we would have about writing, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and The Legend of Zelda. I could recount hundreds of shopping trips where he would take us out to eat even though he was only supposed to be getting groceries, or how he would spend hours editing movies so he could watch them with me and my siblings without my mother giving him a look. The last time I saw my father was the night before the shooting. I told him I was going to bed and he gave me a hug. He told me, "Okay, good night." I'm sorry. That was the last thing he ever said to me. The next time I saw him, he was in a casket. I could go on about my memories of that horrific week and about how I had to watch my family suffer because of what happened. I could tell you about countless dreams I had of my dad alive and well, only to wake up and realize it was a wishful imagination. I could mention the funeral and how painful it was, but I don't need to because everyone here knows. Instead, I want to say what I have wanted to say since March 22nd, 2021. I am Officer Eric Talley's daughter. 3.5 years ago, Boulder police officers showed up at my family's home to apprise us of the worst news possible. My father was dead. I was 16 at the time and didn't realize the gravity of the situation. But over the next several years, it slowly began to sink in. My dad wasn't there when I earned my license. He wasn't there when I got my first job. He wasn't there for my 18th birthday. He wasn't there to interrogate my first boyfriend like he had always told me he would. Should I get married, he won't be there to walk me down the aisle. Should I have children, he won't be able to meet them. He wasn't there for any of those big steps in my life, and he won't be there for any future steps in my life because he can't. Because the defendant took that away from him. Your Honor, I have to live the rest of my life without my dad. The defendant has deprived my family of something precious, and we have to live every single day with the knowledge that we will never get to see our dad again in this life. Despite the pain, the sorrow, and the anger I have struggled with for the last few years, I want to make it clear I am not seeking revenge. The defendant's actions on March 22nd, 2021 were horrific. He killed 10 people and he tried to kill 37 others. He must face the consequences of his actions. Justice demands that the balance he upset by his actions be restored. My hope is that justice will be served in a way that honors my father's memory, the memory of the other 9 victims, and ensures that such a tragedy does not happen to anyone else. Finally, I would like the defendant to know that I do not hate him. I refuse to hold on to any more bitterness, and I refuse to let his actions have any hold over my life. God offers forgiveness to those who have true repentance for their sins. Christ forgave his tormentors from the cross. Who am I to do any less? I offer my forgiveness to the defendant, trusting in God's grace that one day Mr. Alissa accepts the consequences for his actions. I pray for his repentance and his reconciliation with God. My dad did not deserve to die. But if he could say one thing right now, it would be to not let what has happened control my life. He taught me to believe that God always brings good out of evil. And that belief has held me up for these past 3.5 years. I pray that all the victims of this tragedy find the same peace I have. Your Honor, respectfully, I ask for the maximum sentence for Mr. Alissa, simply for justice. Thank you.
Your Honor, Eric Talley's wife, Leah Talley, has a written statement. She's asked Livia Talley to read it to the court. We may have a change in who's going to read it, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Judge Chief Baki. My name is Susan Gilmore, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Talley family. Chief Judge Baki, I want to begin by thanking you, members of the jury, Michael, Ken, the entire prosecution team, for your dedication to meting out justice in this case. Though the guilt of the defendant is clear, The pursuit of justice is still essential, and we are grateful for your role in serving justice. It is a good and necessary thing that the man responsible for these murders faces the consequences of his actions. This is not an act of hatred or vengeance, but of justice. It is good for society, and it is good for him, and he must bear the weight of his actions and the immense debt he owes to the families whose lives he has shattered. My husband, Officer Eric Talley, gave his life in an act of heroism that helped save others on that tragic day. Though we have grieved deeply for his loss and for the loss of the 9 other victims, I refuse to hold anger or bitterness in my heart. This would only add to the burden we as a society must bear for the grave wrongdoing of this man. This would only perpetuate the cycle of anger and hatred he began and so rampant that day. I offer my forgiveness to this man in faith, trusting in the power of God's grace. I pray one day he will accept it and choose repentance and conversion of his heart to the goodness and truth. I am reminded of the story of Saint Maria Goretti, who at 11 years old forgave her attacker as she lay dying from 14 stab wounds. Her mother also later forgave the man who had taken her daughter's life. And years after his sincere repentance and release from prison, they were reconciled. This is a kind of redemption I hope for my husband's killer. God did not desire Eric's death or the deaths of those other innocent people that day. He did not desire his own son's death on the cross. But we have learned that through the cross, God can bring good out of evil. This has been our guiding light through these painful years. I pray that all those who are still carrying the weight of this pain in time can find peace and seek triumph through this tragedy and the healing and peace that only Christ can offer. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the defendant stands convicted of trying to kill many other individuals, 3 of whom would like statements provided to the court today.
Okay.
So for the first 2, I'm going to read them to the court, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
The first is from Sarah Moonshadow. Your Honor, my name is Sarah Moonshadow, and I'm here today to share how the mass shooting has deeply affected my life. This tragedy has brought overwhelming emotional and psychological pain, changing everything about my daily routine, my relationships, and my sense of safety. Even after all this time, I find myself wondering if things will ever feel normal again. I struggle to find comfort in public spaces where I once felt at ease. Going to the store, something I used to do without a second thought, now often leaves me in tears. The loss of my dog, Rolo, shortly after the incident has added to my grief, leaving a hole in my heart. My relationship with my children has also changed in ways I never expected. We feel more like strangers now, and the closeness we once had seems distant. My daughter, Shiloh, who was starting to blossom into a young girl, has retreated into a dark place since that day. I miss being a part of her growing up, and it breaks my heart to see her struggle. Sleep has become elusive for me, and I can't remember the last time I felt truly rested. Each day serves as a reminder of the peace I used to take for granted. I often think about the defendant and the life he has chosen to forfeit. It pains me to consider that he too will miss out on so much. Returning to work feels daunting, and I worry if anyone would be willing to hire me now. The uncertainty about my future weighs heavily on me, making it hard to maintain a stable home. I feel lost, searching for a sense of direction in my life. Writing this statement is tough for me. I usually try to avoid thinking about how this tragedy has impacted me, but it continues to linger. I miss who we were before that day. My relationship with my children, the security of my job, and the comfort of home that Boulder used to provide, but I feel no longer does. In light of my experiences, I feel a strong desire to give back and create something positive. I dream of starting a rescue on our property and reopening a youth camp that was shut down. I believe this camp could offer kids a safe space to connect with nature and learn important life lessons, potentially steering them away from the path that led to this tragedy. Additionally, I envision providing a safe space for animal rescues, allowing those who are healing to bond with pets. Dogs could teach us about love and connection, while horses can instill lessons of community and respect. I truly believe that these interactions can be transformative. While employment anywhere now feels intimidating, I'm committed to using my experience to help others heal. It's my way of honoring those we lost and doing everything I can do to prevent future tragedies. Thank you for listening to my story, Your Honor. Sarah Moonshadow.
Thank you.
Your Honor, Kimberly Breckus was a victim of attempted murder on March 22nd, 2021. After the defendant's attack on King Soopers, Ms. Breckus passed. And this written statement is from Jeff Breckus. My wife, Kim Breckus, was involved in the King Soopers shooting that tragic day. She had gone about her usual routine, stopping by the store to pick up some last-minute items. Kim loved preparing beautiful meals for our family and ensuring everything was prepared when we came home from work. At the time, Kim had been dealing with some medical challenges, but had just entered a steady remission. Kim was starting to live again, returning to work, enjoying walks, traveling, and embracing life with me and our family. That day, however, impacted her world and ours and changed it forever. While checking out at the counter, just about to pick up her bags, she fell to the floor. Kim had a frozen shoulder from a recent procedure to remove lymph nodes, so she found herself immobilized, locked in terror as she heard the gunshots and the screams. One of the King Soopers employees saw her and urged her to run. Somehow she managed to get to her feet, escape down an aisle, through the meat department, and out the back of the store. She then scrambled up the icy incline behind the store and made her way traumatized toward our house. About 1.5 miles away from the store, she called me immediately after getting to safety. I was in southern Denver at the time. Even in her panic, she tried to keep me calm, telling me she was okay, despite the helicopters overhead and the breaking news of an active shooter at the store. This day devastated her. From that moment on, Kim was never the same. She could barely drive past that store. As time passed, the trauma set deeper into her mindset. Then her cancer returned with a vengeance. It spread to her bones, and she started having nightmares and flashbacks of the shooting. She was no longer the Kim we knew. She was haunted by the question of why she survived that day when so many others did not. Though the cancer eventually took her life, I truly believe that she was the 11th victim of that shooting. Kim was healthy and in remission before that day. The trauma of the shooting stole her life, even if it did not take her immediately. Our family still lives in this community, and we struggle every day with the reality of what happened. Even going into King Soopers is unbearable for us. What would I want to see happen? I would like Kim's life to be recognized as another casualty of this horrible event. I want justice for the man who randomly decided to kill innocent people. Why would anyone take lives for no reason? I don't know how the justice system handles such devastation, but I have faith that something will happen. Personally, I want to face him. I would like to look him in the eyes and ask why he did this. Why he not only killed 10 people that day, but in the end, took my wife from me and our 4 children. Life is so different without her. Jeff Breckus. And Your Honor, the third and final victim impact statement from a victim on behalf of a victim of attempted murder is from Jacqueline Julie Keaton, who, as the court will recall, testified during the trial as well, and she'd like to make a statement today.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Thank you so much. I just first of all, would really like to thank the prosecuting team, Michael, Ken, and Sarah, and all of the victims advocates. That they have been tremendously helpful to me over the last 3 years. Katerina, I'm just grateful. While I didn't directly lose a person, March 22nd, 2021, and the events of that day will forever be indelibly imprinted on my brain, along with the grief for the victims that will forever live in my heart. I will never forget the exchanges that I had with Denny Stong, Ricky Olds, Terry Likert, or Lynn Murray. I will never forget the calm of that Monday, just before the chaos and destruction that ensued as the shooter rained bullets on my community and gunned down my friends, coworkers, and customers. Boulder has always been my soul sanctuary, as it might be considered by many. My parents went to CU. I was born here. I went to CU. I went to the Boulder College of Massage Therapy. I have had some of the best years of my life here in Boulder, which is why I came back in 2020 to work here. First in an insurance company, then at the King Soopers Table Mesa during COVID. Prior to the shooting, I was just beginning to feel like I was back on my life's path. My self-confidence and self-esteem were blossoming as I had had several rough years as an empty nester and leaving Las Vegas and a career as a massage therapist. I feel like the shooting derailed my life. I left Boulder for 2 years because I simply couldn't be here anymore. I was numb to the majesty of the Flatirons, a gorgeous sunrise or sunset. In fact, I did that. I couldn't cry. I couldn't feel joy or be happy. I couldn't get angry. There were days when I couldn't even get out of bed. I drank heavily to stay numbed out. I didn't know how to be or what emotions were lurking below the numbness. I was scared of myself, going out to public places, being in open spaces. Still to this day, I often feel stuck. Depression and anxiety is a nasty combination. I was diagnosed with PTSD and ADHD. For a long time, my bed seemed to be the only safe place. Since I was living with my mom at the time, she was the only person I could actually get angry with, which as she was the closest in proximity. Thus, our relationship was on the verge of being destroyed. My son came out immediately the next day after the shooting, and I don't know whether it was sympathetic, but he started to have anxiety attacks too, and he's my my favorite person on the planet. So when I saw Lisa walking with a group of people from to our rendezvous point, I knew that Denny Stong had died, and I held her hand on the way to Boulder PD, and she kept rubbing my nails, and she was crying, and I just couldn't tell her that I knew her son was dead. Following the shooting immediately, Kroger was generous to a degree. They placed employees from the destroyed store and other temporary nearby stores on temporary assignment. If you remember, I was training to be a head clerk. However, while on temporary assignment, one cannot be promoted or demoted. So I was in a holding pattern and got more and more frustrated, which fed the anxiety and my depression. And I wasn't making the money that I would have gotten if I had been promoted, which would have likely occurred had the shooting never happened. Exactly 6 months to the day, on September 22nd, 2021, another shooting happened at a Kroger store in Tennessee where 8 people died. That was it for me. I didn't go to work that day, and I quit King Soopers. Over the last 3.5 years, I have stumbled from job to job. I sold cars for 6 months and up and walked out. I just couldn't be anywhere, and I didn't care. They call it anhedonia, which is this great extreme apathy. And so coming back to Boulder, I did work at Table Mesa, the King Soopers. I tried to put my big girl panties on and get out there and get back to the store. But I think that there's some trauma there because residual stuff that I can't even put a finger on because that was the last thing that Denny Stong said to me was, I think they're fixing the leak on the roof, and they haven't fixed the leak on the roof. $12 million worth of renovations, and they didn't fix the leak on the roof. That's it. I'm sorry that this is more about me, but the reverberating effects of something like this it's like throwing the ripple effect. It affects everybody in the community. It affected my mother. It affects my relationship with my son. I'm in therapy for twice a week, and I know that there's other stuff, but the shooting really derailed my life for 3 years and 3.5 years. So while I have had a minute of compassion for the shooter, I really hope that when he's in prison, that he can be researched and figure out why people do this kind of stuff aside from mental illness. And thank you so much for listening to me. Again, you guys, thank you all, everybody so much for
Thank you.
listening to my story.
John, I appreciate the court giving the victims all the time you have this afternoon. Since we've gone to immediate sentencing, I don't need to lay out the facts for your honor. 10 lives were taken that day. So many people were devastated. We have other victims of attempted murder who are here in the audience who are lucky to be alive. There is so much trauma in this case. You see it today, and you've seen it since the very beginning and presiding over this case from the very start. There are people that we've met with who barely survived that day who, on one hand, are lucky to be alive. But when you talk to them, they don't feel fortunate at all. Their lives have been wrecked by this guy. So the murder victims, they're gone. And the victims' families who've lost them are devastated. But even for those that were lucky enough to survive King Soopers, their lives are forever impacted and forever altered. And it, as the court is aware, has been a long journey to today. And in hearing the victims speak today, there's fear, there's grief, there's anger, there's trauma. There's also strength and resiliency. And there's a lot of negatives that I could say about how long this journey has been for them to this day. But I will say one of the positive things is getting to know how amazing the victims were and are, and also how incredible the families are. I feel deeply sad for them that they've had to endure this criminal case for 3.5 years and that they're going to have to live with what happened on that day for the rest of their lives. But over the time since this case began, seeing them and getting to know them with their strength and their perseverance, and then hearing them be able to express their grief, anger, and trauma today, it's just incredible to me what they've had to live through. And they're all different people, different families. Some are in different places in terms of their grief, but they have one thing in common, of course, which is the defendant brutally killed 10 people and devastated so many others. It's not hyperbole to say that everyone in this courtroom, and I imagine most people in the community, remember where they were when this defendant attacked King Soopers and how they found out about what happened at King Soopers. For some, it was a call that people were in danger and they rushed there. For some, it was a call that their loved one had gone to King Soopers and they would never be home again. But for everyone in the community, people have been deeply affected by what this defendant chose to do, including the victims, of course, of attempted murder and assault. For those victims of attempted murder, the sentence the court imposes, I do think, is significantly important. In some ways, it may be symbolic, but I think the symbolism is important. For each one of the attempted murder victims, Your Honor, they barely escaped with their lives. We have 15 civilian victims of attempted murder. We're able to get out of that store without being killed that day. And we have some real unsung heroes like Christopher Tatum and Logan Smith and others. And then, of course, the response by the law enforcement officers that day. One of the officers who's here in the courtroom told me a while back, never call me a hero. Never say I'm a hero. I'm going to comply with that wish, but I don't know another word. What it takes people to charge into a store where they think they're outnumbered and outgunned, and this guy is waiting to ambush them. Watching the video of Officer Talley in his car speeding to King Soopers, I've watched that video over and over and over again, of course, getting ready for trial. That video still is jarring every time that he's driving as fast as he possibly can. Although I love that every officer who testified was like, while still maintaining the safety of others on the road. Yes, while doing that too. But he drove as fast as he possibly could to certain danger. And he made the ultimate sacrifice. And for all the officers who were with him and who followed him, this has deeply impacted them. So I won't call him a hero. I won't call them heroes. There's really no other word for what they did that day. And the defendant ambushed them, and he deliberately tried to kill those officers. And Officer Braun and Officer Kilburn walked out with blood on their face. I don't know how other officers didn't die that day. It is truly miraculous, because he certainly gave his best. The defendant did. One thing I look at in this case, because in some ways what the defendant chose to do, what he planned to do, what he prepared to do is horrific beyond words. And one can get really lost just thinking about what he did and why he did it. I look at the response, not just by the unsung heroes who were in King Soopers, not just by law enforcement, but by the community in the days, weeks, and months that followed. I could go on and on about the response, but I will say incredible people have given their all to help the victims from the very first seconds all the way through to today. And that response says more about who we are as a community than the acts of one person. I do want to thank the jury for working through this case, because as much as this is the work we do, in this courthouse, we see some horrific things. These people came in as community members, selected at random, and they served. And I do think it's worth noting that of all the trials we've done, I've never seen a jury show up the way they have in this case. Never complaining, never questioning, never calling in sick, all the valid things that come up in other cases, not once in this case. Really a testament to them and how seriously they took this role. And I think it's fair to say that they did exactly what they're supposed to do as jurors. Come in with an open mind and give the defendant a fair and impartial trial. He chose to exercise his constitutional right to a trial. That's why we're here. And that's what the jury and this court have given him. It was noteworthy to me that the jury asked to watch that 8-minute video. We showed it once during the trial. Mr. Kuffner referenced it in his closing. And it's one of the things they wanted to watch. I think it speaks to their commitment to reaching the right outcome, but also speaks to this. that you watch that 8-minute video, as the court has as well. You watch it, and it is brutal what this defendant did. You watch it as the jury did, and you realize this was not about mental illness. This was about brutal, intentional violence, for which he deserves the maximum. I'm going to ask the court to impose the maximum, which is life without the possibility of parole for each one of the 10 murder victims, each sentence consecutive to the other. And I'm going to ask the court to impose the maximum for the attempted murder victims, the assault victim, as well as sentences for the large capacity magazines that he picked out, selected in advance, and then on that day when he drove to King Soopers. So I'm asking the court to impose a sentence of 10 consecutive life terms plus 1,334 years in state prison. It's just a number, but to me that number means a lot about what he did and the violence and trauma he inflicted upon so many people. That would be the maximum sentence allowed for the 27 murder counts, because some of them are extreme indifference and others are with intent. So 27 attempted murder counts plus the assault count plus individual sentences for each of the large capacity magazines. I think the victims who spoke today have said everything else that could ever be said about what the defendant did and the impact it's had on them. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Harrell.
Your Honor, neither myself or Mr. Alissa wish to make a statement. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you will bear with me, when I signed up to be a judge, they had no instruction for us in this type of a case. And thankfully so, because one would wish that you wouldn't need instruction on how to do a sentencing in this type of case. But unfortunately, that day has come that we need to start training judges on how you address so many victims of such a horrendous crime. It was not lost on me that I can't remember if it was the first day of jury selection or the first day of evidence that there was a shooting at a school. And then it was not lost on me that there was a shooting in Birmingham, Alabama. First thing I did was call my nephew and say, "Are you okay?" He lives in Birmingham, Alabama. With that said, I don't want to take away from what all of you have said, because that really is the most important thing here today. I really appreciated hearing about Nevin, and I'm going to miss some of you because I tried to keep track of where you're spread about, but hearing about Kevin and Trelana and the fun parts of their lives, the cute parts of their lives, Ricky, Denny with his coffee, right? Lynn Murray, Terry Liker, who was the gem of King Soopers in Table Mesa. Jody, cheers with a frozen margarita on Saturday, I think, if I have that right. And hearing about Suzanne. And of course, hearing about Officer Talley. So I appreciate that. It's important that that be heard, not just by us, but by all the folks who have been invested in this trial, who have been listening, that there's somebody behind that name. So thank you all for the courage that it took to stand up there, to read what you had written, what others had written, and bringing, I think, by what you have said and what you have shown, bringing hope to our community. Because I'm gonna refer and steal from Sergeant Heaton. He sent a letter to the court. And the reason I say hope is because what he wrote in his letter, and I think I'm going to change the wording a little bit, but he wrote, "Yet in reflecting on this tragedy, I have discovered the unbreakable strength," he says, Boulder community, and the remarkable resilience of its people, but that also includes all of the named victims and their family members. That's where I get the hope, is the resilience. Some of you who even talk about forgiveness, and how it has strengthened, I believe, your relationships with your family and your community. And I have to say, I've seen so many of you in here since that summer. I think it was like in August when we had one of our first court appearances. I have seen you steadfast sitting in my courtroom, letting me know that you are here. And I will say, I did have to give an admonition during the trial, and I will tell you, it was for none of you. I just did it that way because a couple of the jurors were getting on each other's nerves a little bit. You have always been respectful, always. And there has never been an issue. You just show up hoping and waiting for this day. So the court appreciates that. Some of you have raised some issues like, what is justice? You've apologized for some of your statements or saying, I don't know what the right words are. And none of that matters. The right words are the words that you have chosen to give life to those who died and to make us all aware of what had happened to you and how you've been impacted. So there are no right words. And yeah, justice is this process. And I have to say, some of you might not appreciate this, and I understand that. But from the court's perspective, these are the best lawyers I have ever seen on both sides. Thank goodness for both sides, because that's what makes this work. And if we did not have the strength of the folks who have done their jobs over the last 3.5 years on this case, our justice system is nothing, and there is no justice. So I thank them for getting this trial done and doing it right and fair. And I do not believe, and I have said this, anyone has purposely ever delayed this case. It is just trying to get to the end run and getting it done right, and here we are. And so I thank them. Talking about heroes, I will call them heroes. I don't know which officer said that to you, but I look at this back row and I see faces that I recognize from the photos or the videos. And I have thought to myself and said to my family at home that it's incredible to see what exactly Mr. Dougherty just talked about. It's that idea that we all run from gunshots and you all run to them. And I was equally just amazed at Officer Talley's ride into Boulder. And it almost kind of makes you giggle, right? When he's yelling at the car, don't block me off, don't block me off. I mean, it just spoke to what a sincerity he had in his heart to go and do his job. And I get the thing, don't call me a hero. I'm just doing my job. But whether you all like it or not, you are our heroes. And particularly on that day, to see the intensity on your faces as you're going in to the King Supers, the photographs, that gives me hope. That gives me a lot of hope. So with that, I'm not going to belabor any further. However, Mr. Dougherty, I do have to ask you, because on the F2, what is the maximum on the F2, if you know?
In the F2, the attempt to murder count, Your Honor, would be 48 years.
On each count?
Yes, sure.
Okay, and then what about on the F6? What's the maximum?
The F6, we were asking for 1 year on each one, Your Honor.
All right, and how about on that first degree assault?
The maximum on that is 32 years, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. I've done a lot of reading, but bear with me because this is important. As to count one, murder in the first degree as it relates to Nevin. It's a life sentence with no possibility of parole. Count two, murder in the first degree as it relates to Kevin. Life sentence, no possibility of parole. Count three, as it relates to Trelana. Life sentence without the possibility of parole. Forgot to add, these all run consecutive to each other. Count four, murder in the first degree as it relates to Ricky. Life sentence, no possibility of parole, consecutive. Count five, murder of Denny. Life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count six, as to Lynn. Life sentence, consecutive without the possibility of parole. Count seven, as to Terry. Life sentence without the possibility of parole, consecutive. Count eight, murder in the first degree of Jody. Life sentence without the possibility of parole, consecutive. Count nine, murder in the first degree as to Suzanne. Life sentence without the possibility of parole, consecutive. And then count 10 as to Officer Talley. Life sentence without the possibility of parole, and that is consecutive. Count 11 as it relates to Angela Peacock. Attempt to commit murder in the first degree, 48 years consecutive. Count 12, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree as it relates to Angela Peacock, 48 years consecutive. Count 13, murder in the first degree attempt as it relates to Casey Taylor, 48 years consecutive. Criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, count 14, as it relates to Hayden Steele, 48 years consecutive. Count 15, Kajendra Mala, 48 years consecutive. Count 16, attempt to commit murder in the first degree, as it relates to Jacqueline Keaton, 48 years consecutive. Count 18, as it relates to Jacqueline Keaton, 48 years consecutive. Count 19, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, as it relates to Paul Johnson, 48 years consecutive. Count 20, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, as it relates to Paul Johnson, 48 years consecutive. Count 21, as it relates to Kimberly Breckus, 48 years consecutive. Count 22, as it relates to, again, Kimberly Breckus, 48 years consecutive. Count 23, as it relates to Micah Hong, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, 48 years consecutive. Count 24, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, as it relates to Micah Hong again, 48 years consecutive. Count 25, as it relates to Tasia Beresford, 48 years consecutive. Count 26, as it relates to Tasia Beresford, 48 years consecutive. Count 27, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, Patrick Cruz, 48 years consecutive. Count 28, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, as it relates to Patrick Cruz, 48 years consecutive. Count 29, as it relates to James Graham, 48 years consecutive. Count 30, as it relates to James Graham, 48 years consecutive. Count 31, Kelly Ray Dorr, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, 48 years consecutive. Count 32, as it relates to Sarah Moonshadow, 48 years consecutive. Count 33 also relates to Sarah Moonshadow, 48 years consecutive. Count 34 is her son, Nick Edwards, 48 years consecutive. Count 35, Nick Edwards again, 48 years consecutive. Count 36, Christopher Tatum, 48 years consecutive. Count 37, again, Christopher Tatum, 48 years consecutive. Count 38, shifting to law enforcement, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, as to Officer Brian Capobianco, 48 years consecutive. Count 39, as it relates to Officer Pam Gignac, 48 years consecutive. Count 40, as it relates to Officer Richard Stidell, 48 years consecutive. Count 41, as it relates again to Officer Richard Stidell, 48 years consecutive. Count 42, as it relates to Officer Brian Pleiter, 48 years consecutive. Count 43, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, again, Officer Brian Pleiter, 48 years consecutive. Count 44, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree as it relates to Officer Alexander Casera, 48 years consecutive. Count 45, also as it relates to Officer Alexander Casera, 48 years consecutive. As to count 46, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree as it relates to Officer Jenny Schmeitz, 48 years consecutive. 47 is also in regard to Officer Jenny Schmeitz, 48 years consecutive. Count 48, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree as it relates to Officer DJ Richard Smith, 48 years consecutive. I believe count 49 also is in regard to Officer DJ Smith, 48 years consecutive. Count 50, criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree. My counts are going to be off a bit here. Some of the counts had changed.
That's right.
With that said, then, yeah, I've got the old one. So my apologies on that. However, with all other remaining counts of criminal attempt to commit murder in the first degree, it's 48 years consecutive. What's the parole period on the F2? 5 years?
Yeah, sure.
5 years of parole on all of those counts, class 2 felony, attempt first degree murder. That takes me to our count of first degree assault as to Ms. Schottky, 32 years. What's the parole period on that?
I believe that's 5 as well, yeah.
All right, 5 years of parole. And then as to the 5 counts of the class 6 felony, 1 year of prison. It's followed by 1 year of parole. All counts run consecutive. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Donna. And just to clarify, there was a revised list of the charges that were filed. So the court has run all the murder counts, it's life without possibility of parole consecutive to one another, all the attempted murders, 48 years consecutive to one another.
Yes, sir. Same with the 5 magazine.
6 large capacity.
Yes, sir. There was a motion for credit time served. Have you seen it?
No, you're not. I have a suggestion.
Go ahead.
I haven't seen the motion. I'm happy to look at it, email counsel in the court tomorrow, our position on whether it needs to be addressed. I trust that counsel has provided the case to be accurate. I'll take a look at it.
Okay. All right.
We have not seen it yet.
Anything else from the people?
Mr. Kupner suggesting that perhaps we could talk to Mr. Collins after, just to make sure the MIT was accurate on the counts that the sentences that they posed on the accused count numbers, but otherwise I have nothing else to add.
Okay, all right. Ms. Harold?
No, Your Honor, I have nothing.
Okay, all right. All right, court's in recess. Thank you. Take care. Jesse, thank you.
The system's rigged, man, it's time to break free. Eyes wide open, gotta see what I see. Standing on the front lines, fighting for the truth. Lift the veil of lies, it's time to be the proof. Take a stand, don't you back down. Raise your voice, let's shake the town. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. United and free. Marching with a purpose, we're taking it higher. Fighting through the struggle, igniting the fire. No more silence, we'll make the noise loud. Together in this battle, standing strong and proud. Injustice fades when courage aligns. Rise up together, break the confines. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. United and free. So rise up now, it's our time to shine. Together we'll write a new paradigm. You paradigm, you paradigm. Whoa, whoa. We're the voices that won't be ignored. Breaking chains, yeah, we're ready for war. With the power of the people, we'll make them see a world of justice, united and free. United and free. Rise up now, it's our time to shine. United and free. We'll write a new paradigm, new paradigm. United and free. United and free. free.